Welcome to Becoming Fearless, the personal growth podcast for you if you are ready to overcome fear and step into your greatness. Our purpose is to help you overcome your limits, have loads of fun along the way, unlocking your fullest potential in life, business, health and relationships every single day. I'm your host, Charlotte Carter, a high-performance coach and entrepreneur with over 20 years' experience. I've supported many highly driven, talented people like you who dream big and are ready to take action to overcome what's holding them back. Each week, my guests and I will be sharing hacks and habits on how to build self-belief, courage and confidence to master your mindset and navigate your emotions so that you can reach your human potential in a way that feels light, fun and easeful and helps you become fearless. Let's go. Hello and welcome to another episode of Becoming Fearless. I think this must be my 70th, I don't know, a fair few episodes I've got under my belt now. And I'm really excited for this one. It is a guest episode and I am getting into the space now of bringing on people that I have never had a conversation with, that have come into my energy, into my space for some reason, either as a referral or as a just an opportune moment that came in. And my next guest on this episode is somebody like that. So I'm really intrigued as the conversation. I'm really excited about it because it's going to be full of lots of tips and tricks, I feel. So Claire, do you want to just introduce yourself and let people know a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, thank you, Charlotte. It's fab to be here. So I'm Claire McPherson. I am the Wealth Alchemist. So I am super passionate about helping put wealth into the hands of more women through specifically purpose-driven businesses, because I think that life is too short to do something that we don't love. And I think the most fulfilling thing that we can possibly do is to make money, create the life that we want to live, and inspire other people to do the same and create a beautiful ripple effect from there. So that's what I really stand for. That's what I'm all about. That's what's really driven me on my journey. And yeah, I'm super excited to be here to chat that through with you and to see where the conversation goes.
Thank you so much. So first of all, my first question before we go on your journey and your history is about, do you feel like you are 100% nailing your purpose now?
Oh, 100. I would never say 100% because I think there's always more growth and there's always a next level. I think that I feel far more purpose-led, purpose-driven on my pathway than I ever have before. But equally, I always imagined before feeling like I was on purpose that it was a bit of a hallelujah moment where you had this kind of like spark of inspiration. It was like, oh, now I know this is my purpose. And I remember I spent years thinking, oh, like, I just wish I knew my purpose. I just wish I knew my purpose. And it all changed for me when I realized that it wasn't about waiting for this moment of clarity when it dropped in. And it was instead about actually choosing and leaning into, what lights you up, what you're passionate about, and actually kind of discovering and unfolding your purpose from there. So yeah, I definitely feel purpose driven and I feel very connected to my purpose, but I also absolutely believe that it's a ever growing, evolving thing. And I think that being on purpose and being conscious around the choices that we make and how we're feeling and just who we're being on a day-to-day basis, well, that's an ongoing journey, right? Because none of us are perfect.
Exactly. That is an ongoing journey. So let's take the listeners back to when you were living a life that felt either not on purpose or was a million miles away from what you're doing. Let people know a little bit about your story or what you're happy to share, if that's okay.
Oh gosh, where do I start? So I think for me, kind of growing up, there were lots of things that I loved. And I was the girl who would go to ballet classes and music classes and gymnastic classes and horse riding. And, night after night, I just had all of these activities that I did and all of these different things. And I loved all of it. I felt incredibly lucky to be able to do all of those things as a child and enjoyed them as I began to grow up. And it wasn't until I was kind of that 16, 17, 18 that I started to kind of panic a little bit and think, oh my God, what next? Because I didn't really have clarity on where I was going to take my life. And I had this almost, huge panic inside of me around around thinking the choices that I make now literally kind of put my life blueprint there in place, and what should I be doing and what are the right choices. And it put me into quite a lot of fear and anxiety around trying to make the right life choices and trying to figure it all out. And I certainly put a huge amount of pressure on myself around that. And so, I kind of moved on to university, but chose something that I loved. I went to university and studied drama and music and performing arts and loved all of that, but still didn't have a clue what I was doing. At the end of my degree, I kind of thought, I love performing, I love music, I love being in this space, but I also knew that at the time I wasn't really resilient enough to be rocking down to London and doing auditions. And I knew it would break me because I've always been a very sensitive person, not being great with rejection. And I just thought that's definitely not the life for me. And so I kind of fell into teaching. And I enjoyed teaching and I loved the connection with the kids. But I definitely felt like there's got to be more than this. I met my husband. I had two beautiful boys, which were fabulous. And I just felt like I was at a bit of a crossroads in life. And I definitely felt that deep down, I was searching for something more. I knew that I didn't want to go back to teaching because although I'd loved working with the kids, I hated being in the teaching environment and I felt really limited with that. And so I really wasn't quite sure what I was going to do next. And it wasn't until my husband was actually offered a job in New Zealand that we kind of moved across the other side of the world. I wondered what the heck I was going to do once I got there, and I kind of stumbled into the kind of coaching and self-development space. So it was almost by accident that I found my pathway through that. And to be honest, in the early days, I was attracted to it because I wanted to do the work on myself. I was feeling lost. I wasn't sure. I was kind of like, my gosh, where's my life going? And while being a mum was really important to me, I always very much felt that need for my own identity outside of being mum. And in the early days, when my two boys were little, I struggled with that a little bit. I was like, hold on, where am I? Like, yes, a lot of energy and attention is going into being mum. And I was super grateful for that. But I was also like, and where am I? And where am I going? And what's the next step here? So that kind of led me into this personal development space whereby I was kind of working on myself to try and find myself, but equally feeling quite lost and really not sure where I was going to take my life next. Because I think, so often as we're growing up, you kind of see these levels, these boxes that you tick, and it's like, okay, university, tick, get a job, tick, get married, tick, have kids, tick. What the heck now? And so I just found myself kind of at a place where I felt a lot of gratitude for the life that I had, but also desired more,
It's a really interesting place that I'm sure lots of listeners will identify with, being in that place where you are really having a super enjoyable life on so many levels, and there's so much love and connection and possibilities in that space, but there's equally this gap or this space or this longing or this yearning for like, yeah, but hang on, somewhere in this mix there's me. And somewhere in this mix, there's me with a mission. And somewhere in this mix, I can have all these wonderful things. And this is what I talk a lot about, have permission to have all of these other things as well. So in your self-development journey, what was the first thing that you started with? Because I know a lot of people jump into it like this. And what was the first thing that caught your eye to take you into the space?
Well, I actually knew two people at the time who were kind of setting out in that space. So one had trained as a life coach and one had trained in NLP. And I was intrigued by what both of them were doing. And so for me, I kind of thought life coaching, that feels good. It's working with people, it's helping people. There felt like there was a bit of a crossover in terms of the teaching that I'd done and kind of the purpose behind it. So actually choosing to go and train as a life coach was really the first step for me. in a way, what I hadn't been thinking about at that time is, growing up, I'd had a dad who was really interested in how our brains work, and had brought home, he was working at university while I was a teenager, and he would bring home like dream machines and all of these kind of different fantastical things that we could try to, learn how to lucid dream and everything. So, it was yes, a stepping into that personal development space, but in a way, I'd had this really exciting time where I explored, probably without really understanding the reason behind it, all these different things as a teenager too. So that was really lovely, because I felt like it gave me a bit more of a foundation as I stepped into it. But equally, I remember when I made the decision to do the life coach training, I kind of imagined that I would go do this training, I would be clear, I'd have clarity, I would just have clients as a coach, and it would all just work beautifully. And it definitely wasn't the case. It was exciting to begin with, for sure. And I realized that I really did enjoy coaching, but I was so far from feeling confident. I was so far from having clarity. And I was really nowhere near the point that I expected that I would be after doing that program. And so that came as a bit of a shock. And I definitely had a lot of doubt and a lot of questions around whether I could make it happen, what it would take. I certainly looked around the space and thought, oh, well, I can see other people doing that, but I'm not them. I'm not sure that I have what it takes to do this. So that was really the start of a huge journey for me in both tapping into what I wanted to do, but also having to go on a real inner journey to, yes, give myself permission, begin to believe it was possible, start to see myself in a different way, really, so that I could actually take that action and work in alignment. And, one of the biggest ahas and breakthroughs I had during that period was, to begin with, when I was learning how to coach, it all felt very much just in the mind. It was just a learning, and let me learn the skills, and let me learn how to have the conversation, and then let me work with these people to help them. And it wasn't until quite a way into that journey that the penny dropped, and I realized that it wasn't just about the knowing and the thinking and the headspace, that actually it was about the embodiment piece, and how am I actually living this, and how am I practicing this myself, and how do emotions come into this and energy come into this, and all of those pieces, which really opened up a much more powerful, much bigger space for me, which was both really exciting and scary at the same time.
I can totally identify with that. It's a very, very similar path. I remember when I first trained as a life coach and a clinical hypnotherapist and in NLP, I was like, yeah, this is great, but it's only like 20% of what I'm actually here for. This is like just ticked the intellectual piece on one level, and then I furthered that with the pod psych training for more of the intellectual piece. And it was only really, and this is what I want to dive into next with you, it's only really when you marry the mindset piece with the energetics do you get into this whole anchoring in your intellectual with your intuition, and you start to understand the whole power that you have as a creator. So let's talk a little bit about that whole piece of your journey, because I want to get into this whole holding wealth piece. Let's talk a little bit about the energetics and the embodiment piece, and how you transformed yourself to be able to be the leader in the field that you're in now.
So I think I had a huge breakthrough around that understanding and realizing that it wasn't just about knowing and intellectually being able to do that. And actually, I needed to change how I was seeing myself, and therefore behaving and thinking and acting. And I think that came about. I remember at the time I was doing quite a lot around manifesting and learning how to manifest. And I was reading all the books around it and listening to all the trainings around it, and signed up for some courses around it. And I remember feeling so frustrated, because I was thinking, but I know this, and I know this, and I've read this, and I've heard this, and it's not working for me. And, at the time I was feeling a pinch around the money, and things felt like they were in a difficult space. And I kept thinking, well, it's easy for you to say, whoever it is that I was listening to on the day, easy for you to say, because you've got the money in the bank and you're looking at it like this. And so it's easy to feel abundant when you can see the money there. And so it was almost like I was having this like inner fight with myself, whereby I was trying to force it to happen, but coming from a place of scarcity with it, because I would look at the bank account, I would look at reality, and I'd be like, yes, but there isn't any money. So how am I supposed to be in abundance? And I don't know exactly how the shift happened, but I literally remember waking up early in the morning and having this kind of like moment around, oh, like this isn't about trying to get there and trying to change that and it being okay when. I need to do this now. Like, who am I being now? And that was a really powerful moment for me. And that then led me to really start seeing it from a different perspective, so that I wasn't just thinking about, oh yeah, well, when I get there, I'll be able to. And when I'm like her, I'll be able to. And once I have money, then I'll be able to manifest more. And I started recognizing, no, actually, and I think the biggest shift for me at the time was, what if I started behaving as if I was there already, so that I'm making decisions as if I was there already, so that I'm essentially stepping into that. Now, I can look back at that now and recognize that essentially what I was doing was identity work and kind of stepping into the energy of being that person and kind of quantum leaping myself forwards. But I don't think I had that level of clarity around it as I was doing it. I was kind of stumbling my way through it and following what felt right at the time. And so, by practicing the affirmations and focusing on the positive and the abundance, and thinking, well, what would that version of Claire do in this situation? What would that version of Claire think in that situation? I kind of managed to shift my energy from really being in that place where it was the glass is half empty to being able to take the perspective of the glass is half full. I definitely practiced a lot of gratitude around that time. I remember reading a book by Pam Grout, Thank and Grow Rich, and that really helped me just, again, shift that perspective, so that essentially I stopped being almost like a victim who was stuck and struggling and it's not fair, to empowering myself and recognizing that, no, it's all about how I view this, my perspective of it, and the action that I take around it.
And I think it's that journey. I know so many of my clients and people listening, this bit's tough, because there's like, I get it and I'm listening to you, but I can't help but feel really annoyed because I really want to be in the place that you're at. And there's a lot of like anger and resentment, even though they don't want that in this space. It's like, yeah, but it's not happening now. And I when's it going to happen? And there's like a real hook onto time. There's a real hook onto wanting to have all the answers, and an element of control for so many high performers, because that's how they've built their business or built their life. It's always been a tick box and some level of achievement. And actually, once we start talking about the anchoring in and embodiment and literally practicing being that person that has everything that you desire, it is a switch. And I will always say to people, this isn't an easy ride, that particular piece, but the beautiful realization when you come through that is off the scale. It is something that will change your life, and you'll never be the same again. You will have moments of humanness that will come to challenge you, but you will never be the same again once you understand this particular piece. So let's talk about your whole concept of wealth. And I want to talk a little bit about what you put on the form, which was your business can only grow to what you can hold. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I know there'll be people in my space where they are definitely limiting themselves, people listening that are settling, people listening that feel like they are holding themselves back. However they phrase it, however they identify, there are people that are definitely not playing out to their fullest potential.
So I think that idea of your business can only grow to the extent to which you can hold it goes back to what you said about that frustration that you feel when you see other people who have achieved it and you want it, and you might compare yourself to them, and it can feel so frustrating. And I remember being in that space where I would look at other people who were where I wanted to be, and I would think, but I'm doing all the things and I'm working so hard and I am just as good as them. Like, I can do this too. And I would just feel so frustrated because I was like, what is it about them that means they're there and I'm not? And I think, during my journey, it's almost like the frustration has grown and grown and grown and grown until I've like popped through it to a new level and had a new awareness around it. That's almost like part of my own growth cycle. And so, I was the person who would look at women, especially with businesses that I desired, and think, well, what is it that they're doing that I'm not? And what is so different? And I would literally think, it's not it's not fair. Why am I not there already? I'm working just as hard. But what I've realized on my journey is that actually internally, I wasn't ready to be there. So while on the outside and while 100%, I felt like I am ready to have this, I'm ready to do this. Like, where are the clients? Where is the success? Like, I'm ready now. Actually, the lessons that I learned every step of the way helped me realize that, no, I might have thought I was ready, but I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to hold the space. I wasn't ready to hold the boundaries. I wasn't ready to trust myself at that level. I wasn't ready to invest in myself at that level, not necessarily monetary wise, but energy wise, belief wise. I wasn't ready to work through the emotions that come up at that level. I wasn't, there were all of these things that I don't think you can understand until you're experiencing them, until in that situation and feeling that like, oh, and I think that as I look back at my own business and where my own business has grown, it has only grown to the extent by which I've learned to trust myself. I've learned to navigate that pathway. I've learned to hold, strong boundaries, but still really heart-centered boundaries, that I've learned how to do it in my way, as opposed to try. And when I say copying other people's way, I don't mean copying how, what they sell or what they do, but like how you think that they're like growing a business and what you think they're doing. And I realized, and many of the times it was by trying to do something another way because a coach or a mentor says, this is how you need to do it. And then recognizing it was completely out of alignment for me. And until I finally got to a place where I would give myself permission to do it my way. So that I think there's a real journey there that until we're on that journey and seeing it, we don't really recognize the value of it. And now I look back, I can see that every time I was frustrated, every time I felt like I failed, every time I felt like I had to go through a struggle, actually, it was a lesson that I needed to learn, that I was essentially fighting myself around. I was trying to like not allow it. And it wasn't until it pinged through and then I had that learning around it that suddenly everything shifted. So I definitely think our internal journey really does impact and almost dictate what we're able to create on the outside, that we can feel ready, but there's a difference between us thinking that and us actually being ready. And I think my biggest lesson is don't fight the growth, don't fight the lesson, because I think that I probably made my journey more difficult than it needed to be because I did fight it and because I would cling on. I'm a bit of a control freak, to be honest. That's one of my biggest learnings and ongoing learnings. I cling on because I so desperately want to control it all and make it right and make the right decisions. And probably the biggest thing I've learned is the more that I can let go of that and surrender into it, the easier it is to grow through that kind of growth zone, to pop out the other side and to feel the flow from there. So I think that's been really important for me. And I think the other thing that I am very passionate about is, when I talk about wealth is definitely not just money in the bank. Wealth is our well-being, it's our health, it's our impact, it's how fulfilled we are on a day-to-day basis. And I think that ultimately the biggest fulfillment comes from making a positive impact with the work that we do. I think that if we're just focusing on ourselves, it limits our growth, it limits our fulfillment. I think that we really need to be able to tap into that energy of, yes, it's for me because I'm deserving and I need to be able to receive, and it's for you and for that ripple effect that we can create. And it's when we can hold the energy of that and take the focus off ourselves a little bit that I think, again, that growth becomes easier. Because I think I almost think we can focus too much on us. And when we focus too much on us, we get too in the detail, we can get too caught up in those limiting beliefs around I'm not ready, I'm not good enough, it won't work. Whereas when we take that focus outwards and we think, no, I'm doing this for a bigger reason, for a bigger cause, that can really give us momentum.
I totally agree, and I kind of identify with that. Being a high performance coach, so much of my work is like, well, I'm just going to really understand this bit that I'm going through now so I can teach it. And I would like be in the space of understanding myself whilst fighting myself, whilst blocking my growth on multiple levels, just in this false belief that it was what I was here to teach. And when actually once you open up the how would I say it, the flow of to and from and to and through, then it allows you to build this actually. This is the place that I'm in that's going to grow me to be able to be a different type of leader, which then I will impart into my clients, which will grow them, which will then grow me. And you allow yourself to have this cyclical effect. It really helps. And it's why I think communities are so powerful. The energy of the collective is so powerful. So let's talk a little bit about how you've managed to grow your community, because I think you've got a free group of thousands. How have you been able to hold that, and how quickly did that grow? Just let people know a little bit about that.
Oh, well, so that group has changed and evolved, and so I've got that big community, but now I've got lots of smaller communities as well, and I find that works really well for me.
Yeah.
So I think I realized early on in growing my business that connection was really important, that if I didn't feel connected to the people I was working with, where I was sharing my message, it felt empty for me. So I recognized that community for me was key, and feeling connected to my community, of feeling really connected to my clients, was a really important aspect of the work that I do. So just, holding that space, bringing people into it. I personally have found that I work best in cycles. So I've got like my rhythm that I work in. So, within my business, I'm not 100% present all the time, 24/7 every day. I have times that I lean into it and we have, different experiences and things happening. And then I have times where I kind of move out a little bit and I have my time to kind of check in with me. I kind of see it as being like a wave. I come crashing in with all my energy, and then I kind of move back to rejuvenate again, and then I come in. And so that for me works really well. I do think consistency is important, but I think that you can have your rhythm and be consistent. There's a difference between just being all over the place, here today, gone tomorrow, disappearing for a month, back again out of nowhere, versus having a rhythm that you can honor and hold so that you can show up fully, so that you can hold a powerful space when you do show up. But so that you can still have that time, because I'm actually a total introvert and I need to have my space so that I can then show up and hold space for others.
So let people know a little bit about what these spaces are. How are the ways that people can work with you in this, in your, in how you teach, in the opening, what was your phrase? Turning purpose into gold. I love that. How can people work with you?
So there's a few different ways. So my thing really is that it's always about bringing the energy and the strategy, because part of my frustration when I was trying to build my business is I felt that either I could go somewhere to learn the strategy, but then my limiting beliefs would come in and I wouldn't implement it because I would freak out and I'd be all over the place and stop taking action because it felt a bit misaligned. Or I would have a coach and I'd be feeling in a really good place, but I wouldn't necessarily be taking any action and I'd be all over the place even though I was feeling better. And so I realized that I personally really needed the energy work, the mindset work, but also really clear strategy as I was building my business and as I was moving forward. So as I began to shift from just kind of more operating in the mindset space to actually supporting women in the business space, I recognized that was key for me, because I felt without the other, I wasn't really, supporting them in the way that I knew would create the best results. So I both work with women who are building aligned businesses, soul-led businesses, and we look at like the strategy and the marketing and the mindset and the alignment. But I also train people who desire to be coaches. But I talk about impactful coaching, working outside of the box, bringing all of yourself to the table, as opposed to kind of limiting yourself by a certain set of rules, because I think I'm a bit of a rebel at heart. Freedom is really important to me. So I'm always about, how can we give ourselves permission to be the fullest expression of ourselves? How can we do it in a way that's really aligned? And how can we do it in a way that impacts our lives and the lives of others? And so for me, they're all key components. And I think that, part of why I'm so passionate about doing that is because certainly in the early days, I didn't believe for a second that I could build a business that I have today. I didn't believe I could even have a 6-figure business. Early on, as I was beginning, I really kind of thought, if I could make 2K a month, being a coach, doing something that I enjoy, having flexibility with my kids, that would be incredible. And in a way, I would look at women who had 6-figure businesses and I think, well, like, they must have to work really hard and they can't be really very good mums because they can't have time to be mums and wives and all of that. So there was a lot of judgment going on. And it took me a while to get on board with the idea of even having a business like that, let alone believing that I could. So, so I really feel passionate about helping women who haven't yet necessarily stepped into that belief. I want to hold that belief for them while they attune to it, while they begin to see it's possible for them, because I think that women are so powerful in the work that they do. And I think that more women need to recognize that 100% it's available. And it doesn't mean you need to compromise your life, your family, the things that you love, that actually, I think that once you begin to get to that 6 figures, it becomes easier because you can have support. You're not doing it alone. It completely changes the landscape. And I think that we need to have more women at that level and beyond to really create the ripple effect that we want to see in the world. Like that essentially is what I feel really passionate about. And I think that came through for me big time in 2020 around the pandemic and other things, when I kind of thought, I had like a bit of an awakening around it all, and really kind of recognized that there's a purpose here that really pulls me, that I feel really passionate about. And I think that the way that we can create the world that we want to live in and we want our children to live in is by us empowering ourselves to step up and create that, not to wait for someone else to create it for us, and to create a ripple effect through that work so that together as a collective we can create the change that we want to see.
Awesome. So I love all of that. So if people are interested in what you're saying and would love to know more, what's the best sort of platform? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I think maybe check out the website. It's wealthalchemy.com. And there's lots of links, social media links, other things that they can connect with on there. I'm on social media. Facebook is probably the platform that I use more, so they could find me on there. Claire McPherson, the Wealth Alchemist. And I have so many things going on. I run free experiences and events all the time, which are huge. Like I've just done one this past week. And it really is a full experience where, you can show up, you can absorb so much of it for free, and really move forwards. I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy doing. I love being in a space where I can teach and inspire. And so I hold those kind of spaces regularly. Yeah.
Awesome. So all of those details are underneath the podcast, so you can go and find Claire there and reach out and definitely get on these experiences. I know one of my clients has been on these experiences and talked very, very highly of them. So I definitely recommend getting on them and seeing, absorbing Claire's wonderful energy and learning, from where you are. You'll definitely learn on those kind of experiences. So finally, the question that I ask all of my guests, which is, what is a book that you have read that has really impacted your life on some level that you feel has really shaped who you are today?
Okay, so this was a tricky one because I've read so many books. I love books. I'm a reader, right? So I've read them all. But I would say Dr. Joe Dispenza's Becoming Supernatural. And the reason for that is that I really loved the way that it brought together the supernatural with the science. I've got I've got a brain that likes to logicalize lots of things. And so while I am very deeply spiritual, occasionally I'll have a little in a bit of turmoil around, but is this real? And are we just creating it for ourselves? And like, are we kidding ourselves? And so I quite like it when we can bring in the science as well to back up what we're experiencing spiritually. And so when I discovered Joe Dispenza, especially that book, Becoming Supernatural, I loved the fact that every step of the way he was combining the spiritual, the magical, the supernatural, the unseen with the seen to really show that we do create our reality from the inside out, and to really like tap into that potential. And I remember as I read that book for the first time, it really helped me give myself permission to lean into the unseen more, to trust myself more, to listen to my intuition more, to recognize that actually, Claire, like all of us, like that pull that we feel, the magic that we can connect with is absolutely real, more real than the reality that we're experiencing externally. And I think that it really just helped me step into that in a much deeper way. And it also helped give me language to talk about it for those people who didn't understand it from my perspective. So, family and friends who aren't on a spiritual pathway, I was able to bring in the science side of it and have conversations around it that people could still really understand. And so that was powerful for me, and, really helped where I then took my own work, my own inner journey. I've been to some of his experiences and they're always incredible. And I just think that, kind of bridging that gap between the seen and unseen is where the magic lies. So I just think it's beautiful work.
Yeah, it is. I totally agree. I love his way of explaining that, the science behind everything. So thank you so much. I have loved speaking with you. I have loved allowing you the space to share your wisdom with my listeners. And is there anything else you'd like to add just before we wrap up?
There's maybe one thing I want to share, because I've mentioned alignment a few times, and one of the things that really frustrates me is the misunderstanding around alignment in the kind of spiritual mindset, personal development space. And it held me back for a long time. I used to think, oh, this thing feels uncomfortable, it doesn't feel good, so it must be misaligned. And when I started to reframe that and recognize that that's not necessarily the case, I'm not taking action that's aligned to who I am today. I should be taking action that's aligned to who I am tomorrow. So where do I want to go? Where do I desire to grow to? Who am I becoming on this journey? And how do I take action that's aligned to that? And I think the key thing there is when we're taking action that's aligned to that next level, that next version of ourselves, we're definitely quantum leaping through time, and it can feel uncomfortable. But it's not uncomfortable because it's misaligned. It's uncomfortable just because we're in the stretch zone. We're in that expansion. And that, I think, is one of the biggest gifts that we can have in life. And so I think when I recognize that, and I realized that, this whole being in alignment or out of alignment, we're looking at it from the wrong perspective. It's not about aligning to who I am now and staying in my comfort zone and just having the same thing again and again and again. It's actually about going, no, who am I becoming? How do I align to that? And then giving myself permission to be uncomfortable in that growth, because it is uncomfortable. And it's how we then learn to be in that discomfort that I think is really powerful. Like that for me has been the key to me growing as a person, growing in my business, growing in my life. And so that's probably one of the biggest messages that I want to get out there to people. When you feel like that, like discomfort because you're in your stretch zone, that doesn't mean you're out of alignment. It means you're probably right on track for where you want to be going. So that's probably like the last thing. But I also just want to say thank you so much for inviting me, Charlotte. It's been lovely to be here with you, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. So thank you.
You are so welcome, and I absolutely agree. I think when people, I always say to people, you've got to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. You've got to lean in. That's the exact moment where you've got to lean in. It's the exact moment where all of the magic is. It's the exact moment that actually can change the whole trajectory of your life. So I totally agree, and we need to get this message out to more and more people. So thank you so much, Claire, for being my guest today. I've really loved it. And like I say, if you resonate with what Claire's talking about, please do follow her and get in touch with her and reach out if it's something that you want to explore further. So take care and have a great time, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode. I hope that you're feeling energized, fearless, and inspired to take action today to stand in your greatness. I share even more tools and resources on my I Dare to Leap email newsletter. By signing up, you not only get early access to the I Dare to Leap products and services, but you also get brand new podcast episodes delivered straight to your inbox every Monday, meaning you'll never miss your weekly dose of becoming fearless energy. Sign up now at www.idaretoleap.com/newsletter or click the link in the show notes below.